welcome back to Beyond the Compass, where travelers and the paranormal meet at the crossroads. I am your host, Eric Garcia, and today we are honored to be joined by a remarkable guest who has dedicated her life to exploring the supernatural with both science and heart. Gina Black is a South Florida-based paranormal investigator and co-founder of the Afterlife All-Stars, a team passionate about documenting the unexplained and helping others navigate their encounters with the unknown. Gina's fascination with haunted history began in childhood and blossomed after her family's move into a seemingly normal but very active Florida home. Since then, she's investigated iconic haunted locations across the United States and Japan, building an impressive collection of evidence and experiences. Gina's unique approach blends cutting-edge technology with compassion, as she believes in treating spirits with kindness rather than provocation to foster meaningful connections. In addition to her investigative work, Gina runs She Haunts, a personal blog where she shares her experiences and research and writes for Paranormality magazine, covering haunted locations, paranormal theory, and more. Her work not only helps uncover the mysteries of hauntings, but also supports the preservation of historic sites through educational workshops and fundraisers, which I think is just awesome. So whether she's helping private clients understand their hauntings or capturing the eerie beauty of cemeteries through her photography, Gina's work is driven by a mission to document, educate, and connect. So get ready for an insightful conversation about the science, heart, and humanity behind paranormal investigation. Gina Black, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you. Actually, I should probably thank my sister, Eva. She's been following you for a while now. And recently she's like, there's this girl I think you might be interested in interviewing. And so she sent me your Instagram. I'm like, okay, yeah, I need to find this girl.
Well, thank you, Eva.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's not make her ego too big. It's already gigantic as it is. And she'll be like, see, I get you guessed. Sisters. So let's just jump right into it. So you mentioned that your first big paranormal experience happened after moving to a house in Florida when you were much younger. Now, did you realize something was off right away, or was it more of a slow build like you see in the movies?
Well, it was pretty close to after my family moved in. I would say my first experience, there were still boxes around the house that were unpacked. And, I was hearing sounds that were unexplained in the home. And I actually left the home thinking that someone might have broken in. And I went to a neighbor's house until my mother was able to come home. And the police actually came and looked around the house and they couldn't find any evidence of a break-in. So it was a very odd situation. And of course, I was scolded for having an overactive imagination. And then as time progressed, we had more and more activity in the home. And I would say it did progress to being a little bit more intense as time went on, but certainly I think it was there from day one.
So how old were you when you moved there?
I was about 14 or 15 years old, something around there.
Okay, so you're not the little kid, but you're still saying, hey, there's something weird here, but no one's still listening to you at that point.
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of people, they watch the shows and they read the books and paranormal. After this, was this the moment that spurred you into this, that got you started into this, and what made you want to delve headlong into like getting involved in the paranormal?
Well, I did have an experience in the house that was very profound, and it was something that I couldn't explain. And long story short, I was getting ready for bed one evening. This was my senior year in high school, so I was a little bit older. And everyone in the house except for my father was asleep. And I heard a really loud crashing sound, like a loud bang. And I came out of the restroom. I was washing my face, and I still had soap all over my face, covered in water, because I just kind of ran out to see what was happening. And I saw my father running around the side of the hallway as well. He was coming towards me thinking something happened to me. And a brand new, pair of shoes that I only wore a couple times. One of the shoes they were sitting in my doorway to my bedroom, and one of the shoes was now out in the hallway, and the lace was shredded, and there were two footprints on the wall. So if I were to stand up with my arm above my head and smash a shoe into the wall twice, there were two footprints on the wall. And immediately we both thought it was the cat. We thought that has to be it, because nobody else was around to do that. And we both were not in the area when this happened. but no matter how we tried to, fit the pieces of that together, the cat would never have been able to get two clear footprints on the wall in any capacity. Even if it got the shoelace stuck in its claw or his teeth or something, he would never be able to get it that high on the wall, and it wouldn't be a perfect print. So after that happened, I just became really interested in the paranormal. And around, not long after that, there was shows like Ghost Adventures and Ghost Hunters, and I started watching those shows a little bit more, and it kind of really piqued my interest. So it kind of all, came to be around that time.
So you were like, I can do this. I see myself evolve in this. So, and speaking of those shows, there's so many of them out there. Which ones would you say were more of an influence for you? Or do you ever find yourself yelling at the screen like, no, that's not how you do it? I mean, especially now after you've had a few years into this field.
Well, I started out really liking Ghost Adventures. I just thought it was a really cool show, and I didn't know that provocation wasn't a really nice thing to do. I just thought that they knew everything and they were the experts. And, but I think the more and more I got into the paranormal, I started realizing that maybe that the provocation wasn't the best way to interact with spirits. And I think, over time, maybe the opinion on that shifted a little bit to maybe we should be a little bit more, approach with more kindness, approach with more positive energy, and we might get better reactions. And I think for myself personally, I align with, I think one of my favorite shows is The Kindred Spirits with Amy Bruni and Adam Berry and Chip Coffey. And what's cool about that show is they're just so sweet and they're so understanding, and they really do get a lot of interactions without getting scratched or pushed or, some horrific situation coming to light because of their provocation. They're not doing that. So they're not getting those negative reactions. So I think for me, I don't really want to walk into a room and start poking at somebody in real life, let alone, a spirit. So it's just not my style.
So for you kids at home who want to go out and be the next Sam and Colby, you don't have to go in there and scream your head off in an empty room. Okay. And I've always told people like, oh, you really watch that? I'm like, it's a fun show. It's a bunch of dudes on a road trip and you throw in ghosts. Okay. And that's where it is for me. And I tell people, I'm like, my way, I go in there and I'm more respectful because you cannot see what's in there. You cannot see if it's going to follow you home.
Exactly.
So, it's like with, dealing with the living. Why be rude? Approach determines response.
Right.
So, now you're a Florida native, right?
Originally from New York and New Jersey, and I moved to Florida when I was about 11 years old.
Okay. Actually, the woman I just interviewed a few days ago, she's actually the psychic housewife of New Jersey. I think you would like her. She has this very, very thick New Jersey accent. When I was talking to her on the phone, I'm like, your voice. She goes, yeah, a lot of people tell me I sound like the doctor on The Sopranos. And I'm like, oh my God. And she's like, you can't unhear it now, can you? I'm like, no, I can't. But now, so Florida has its own fair share of haunted history. I mean, you have, Robert the Doll down in Key West, which, I think, but are there any local spots that have become your personal favorites?
Yeah, there's a lot of different local spots, and I am actually doing a little series right now on Instagram about Florida hidden haunts, places that are maybe under investigated that are pretty active. And my paranormal team and I have a regular location that we run events out of as fundraisers, and it's a museum in Fort Lauderdale, and the museum is called History Fort Lauderdale. And we do these events there where guests can come in and they can use investigative tools that they would see on all the shows. And they get to investigate the New River Inn, which is the oldest hotel in Fort Lauderdale, a schoolhouse, and also a pioneer home known as the King Cromartie House. And the King Cromartie House recently had a little bit of a shout out, and it was featured on the Fright Club show with Jack Osborne and the Ghost Brothers. It was
okay.
I want to say it was on season 1, episode 4, but don't quote me on that because I never remember. I always have to look back at my notes.
I'm totally quoting you. Okay, if it's people
no,
watching,
but it was pretty neat. It was pretty neat. It's definitely, if you guys check it out, you'll see some of that. And what's nice about these locations is being that they're under investigated. we get a lot of activity because the spirits want to interact with you, and they don't have somebody in there every night asking the same 3 questions over and over again. So you're more likely to get activity, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean that is really something that's getting more difficult to do these days because a lot of the well-known locations. I mean, the Conjuring House. That's debatable if that was ever a true story, but Waverly Hills and Gettysburg. A lot of these well-known locations that are most likely haunted have just become so saturated with the TV shows and YouTube, and it's like you can find 100 investigations on any of these locations, and now you really have to, especially, which is good, I think, overall for a lot of teams to find places that people haven't heard about that have just as interesting a backstory as some of the more well-known places. So, I mean,
Okay.
it's a grind. Like I live in Texas, and there's some small places here that I'm like, this is so interesting. I'm glad no one's gone here first, so I can find it. I can be the first one. And so the workshops, I think is really, I mean, when I found out about that, the first thing that struck me was like how much you're actually helping the community. It's not just about, okay, getting on YouTube, ghost hunting, you're doing work that helps the community. Can you expand a little bit more on that and how that got set up?
Absolutely. So my team and I, Afterlife All Stars, our common goal with all of this is we do want to help people, and we also recognize that there are people that are interested in the paranormal and in investigating, and people out there that are also like watching the same shows that we were watching years ago, and they're interested in actually investigating a location, not just taking a ghost tour. So what we put together is what we call Paranormal Bootcamp. And
I like that. That's cool.
the Paranormal Bootcamp is just a crash course on how to use the investigative equipment. And the bootcamp portion of our event is done by my partner, Tim Arnwine. And he's a published author of Ghost Hunting Getting Started 1 and 2. And what he'll do is he'll show everybody the equipment that they see, such as recorders, EMF readers, REM pods, and all kinds of other goodies. And he'll just kind of give a crash course to the guests, and he lets everybody try them out. And then we take those tools, whatever anyone's interested in using, and we'll bring them on the investigation with us. And we bring the guests into the investigation. They're not watching us. It's not a show. It's not a performance. They're actually joining the team, and they're one of the investigators. So by doing these events, we've met so many wonderful people, and it just really it's been a very positive experience. And I think it also is beneficial to our community because we're assisting with these historic properties and raising money for them, and also gaining interest into their properties because, maybe these folks might go on an investigation with us and then come back later and take a tour of the museum during the day. And it's becoming to kind of generate more interest in the properties. So we're really happy that we can help out in that way.
That is such a great idea. I mean, and I just can't help but think, my first thought was like, wow, you're really giving back to the community. It's sharing. It's like, hey, check this out. When everything's on the internet these days, and it's like, no, you can actually have a real tactile experience, go into these places, see what it feels like. I mean, I think, that's something I think you can really like expand on, or, even other teams maybe use it in their hometowns across the country, getting some business and some recognition to a lot of these more, earth brick and mortar businesses.
Mm-hmm.
That's really, I commend your work. That is so
Thank
cool.
you.
I like that. Now, you did mention the team you helped co-found, the Afterlife All Stars. So, what's the group dynamic there? I mean, what are the different strengths that people bring to your team?
So our team is made up of myself, my partner Tim Arnwine. We're the co-founders, and then we have lead investigator Heidi, and we have investigators Sasha, Rachel, and Alexis. And we get together, and everybody does, like you said, everybody has strengths and that they bring to the table. I would say Tim is the tech guy. He's always coming up with interesting experiments. He's trying new things. He's researching old experiments and new experiments and how to put them together in an interesting way. So we're always researching. I run the social media. I do love social media. I love connecting with people. I love
See,
talking with people.
I need someone like you because it's like I'm a solo act here, so it's like takes up a good portion of my day. So I need someone like you.
But it's, it's fun. I enjoy it, and I like connecting with the guests and also other paranormal teams. We're trying to always reach out to new teams and get people to hang out with us and investigate with us. And then our other members, everybody brings something to the table. We have uh, Rachel is the best listener. She's really quiet and she loves to listen, so she's really good at picking things up. And then of course my buddy Sasha is the life of the party. Every time we get together, she always has us laughing and really brings a fun energy to our group. And it's just what's nice about being on a team is we're all there with the common goal. We're all there with the passion for investigating, and everybody kind of brings new ideas and fun to the table because when you're out all night long on an investigation, you can't just sit in a dark room and just quietly wait for something to happen. You have to have a good time. And I do think that when you have different people that are thinking in unique ways, that we're bringing a multifaceted approach to an investigation because, they might have an idea that I didn't have, and that might yield better results in a EVP session or, another experiment. So
Yeah.
it's a really good time, and I really enjoy investigating with my team.
That's awesome because, at the core of that, it has to be chemistry, a compatibility, because you're going to be sitting in there all night, and you play off of each other. I mean, the the chemistry is really key to that. So it really, it's a venture symbol for you, apparently. I like it.
Thanks.
Now, there are so many theories. I'm sorry, my questions are going to be like back and
It's
forth all over
okay.
the place. I'm a Gemini, so we're scatterbrained to begin with, so it's going to be here and there. Um, so there are so many theories out there about ghosts and the paranormal, mainly ghosts, about why they linger, what they want. Do you have a personal theory, or does it change depending on what you're investigating, like a case by case basis?
So I always try to keep an open mind, and I especially like to go into locations and sort of see how the location speaks to me. But I do believe there are different kinds of hauntings. I do believe that there are situations where there might be a residual haunting where it's not an actual intelligent sentient being, but it's almost like a snapshot in time that keeps replaying itself. And I think, there's lots of theories about that. I think the most popular is the stone tape theory. Energy can
Where
become trapped,
where
with
it's absorbed into the literally into the stonework.
exactly. And there's a lot of, locations that are around the United States where people believe that could be the case. I know the Stanley Hotel in Estes, Colorado is one of them that I investigated. They're built on a limestone quartz foundation. And a lot of people believe that those minerals help transfer energy and almost like like a computer can store and transmit energy. It's the same kind of thing. It's these minerals are possibly assisting in that. So it's an interesting theory. I think that might be has something to do with it. But I also think that there are spirits that decide they want to stay in a certain location, perhaps because that was their happy place, their home or a vacation home that they really enjoyed and they had fond memories of. Or maybe they just decide for whatever reason that they don't want to move on and they choose to stay there. But then there's also, the unfortunate. I do think there's some cases where maybe perhaps a spirit can not know that they're passed and they're existing in a space and they're unaware that they have passed. And that's really sad, but I think that it comes up and I think that it's possible. So I think that the paranormal has so many sides to it that it's hard to just really pinpoint one or two theories that are the end all be all,
So you
because
have
I think there's so much to do with it.
so you have to be adaptable
Yeah.
depending on location. Yeah, and I agree with you about as far as the limestone
Hmm.
goes because I live here. I'm in Austin, Texas, and about an hour and a half outside of Austin, there's an area called the Devil's Backbone.
I've heard of
And
it. Yeah.
oh yeah, and the entire area, the entire terrain is like the Stanley. It's like mostly limestone, entire cliff
Hmm.
sides. It's everywhere. And the stories connected with the Devil's Backbone are just fascinating. Most of them, what caught my attention is people see a lot of uh, soldiers, Union soldiers on horseback, like a group of them, or they see Native Americans. But what really caught my attention about these stories is that a lot of times people have reported the ghosts noticed them. They look back at
Yeah.
them like, and that led me to wonder down like a little, just down the rabbit hole of what if they're not actually witnessing a ghost? What if because of the limestone and the energies in that location, it's actually a window into the past? So in the past, they see us out of the blue and we see them, and it's like, okay, who are you?
I completely agree with you on that. And I think that that is absolutely possible because there are so many reports. There was one I heard not too long ago about I don't recall the hospital, but it was a hospital property somewhere in the Midwest. And the docent, the person who worked at the location that would host ghost tours and all kinds of things along those lines, they investigate on their own, and they had a situation where they were walking down a hallway and they saw a nurse in 1930s 1940s attire, and she stopped and looked at the man, and as if to say, you're not supposed to be here. And he's shocked and he's looking at her, you're not supposed to be here. And they had a moment where they both recognized each other as not supposed to, not supposed to be in that space. And it's an interesting theory because I think there's something to that. And that could certainly explain, if we're hearing noises, it might be maybe something that's not physically with us. It might be an echo through time, and it may be existing on a different timeline. There's just so many really fun theories I think that you can get involved in with the paranormal, and it's just that it's a lot of endless possibilities that I absolutely enjoy talking about.
Yeah,
So
there's even one I've heard of. They say even Christopher Columbus
mhm,
on his way here, he may have been passing through the Bermuda Triangle, but there's notes that he wrote of seeing an unusual ship that was like
mhm.
nothing he'd ever seen before. And some people theorize, could he have seen maybe a modern day ship at some point? And it's the open sea, so anything could happen out there. And and the if you want the Devil's Backbone area,
Mhm,
they actually featured that on an old episode of Unsolved Mysteries back in like the late '80s, early '90s.
mhm.
And that episode, they did a whole segment on it, and they interviewed a man who lived in that area, and he talked about experiences that he and his family went through. And that guy eventually went on to write a few books specifically about the stories connected with the Devil's Backbone. And that episode is actually it's available on YouTube. If you like, I can send you the link to it.
I would love to. Yeah,
Yeah,
I used to watch that show growing up, and I know not all of the episodes are on streaming networks now, but I love that show. Yes, please send it to me.
yeah. Oh yeah, I have it saved somewhere because it's like I said, it's like not even 2 hours from where I live. I'm
Mhm,
doing myself a disservice if I go out there. And but yeah, they have some really. They even have a bar out there, an old tavern called the Devil's Backbone Tavern, to where it's like it's supposed to be haunted itself. And they have a fireplace in this bar, and just above the fireplace in the stonework, depending on the lighting, it looks like a devil's head. The rocks in
ooh,
the fireplace. I mean, you put the right light on it, and it looks like horns and everything. You're like, okay, there might be something to this.
that's really cool.
So, along the lines of these investigations and how you do, like we were saying, you approach one, each case a little differently. Have you personally ever felt like, a spirit may have been helping you during investigation, like kind of guiding you toward the evidence or making it easier for you to document their presence?
Well, I have had some experiences where my name has been called, and even when I'm not around, other investigators that I work with have gotten my name. And I do think that perhaps because I'm a social person, and because, I'm talkative, and, I just put myself out there whenever I'm investigating. I try to be as friendly as I can with everyone. I just think that perhaps the spirits are inclined to want to talk to me because they know that I'm genuine. But I think that when in those situations where I have had my name called, we've had some very interesting events that led up to my name being called, and also certain situations that happened afterwards. The first time it ever happened, I was in a hotel in Miami, and the owners had given us permission to explore the whole first floor, and we also had some rooms there. And I got my name called, and during the session where my name was called on a recorder, it said, hey, Gina, go back. And I had left the room with my team. I was like, they're off in another room. I'm going to walk around in the dark by myself with my little EMF light. And, I've got my recorder. And I said, that's interesting. Go back. All right, maybe I'll go back in the room with them. And I went back in, and then we had a bunch more activity happen. So I do think in that situation, I was being kind of poked and pushed towards them, that nudged. And then I had another situation at our regular event hosting space in Fort Lauderdale, and I had my name called a closet, and there was just a succession of things like knocking, a bell was rang, there was all these things, and I think that something was trying to get my attention. And I don't know for what, but there was a series of interesting sounds and equipment going off after, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that hasn't happened to me yet. That would be kind of freaky. The closest thing that's happened to me like that is I was talking to a group of Native American ghost hunters, and they had a REM pod on their table, and the REM pods just started going off, and they're like, "That's not us. You got something with you." Wonderful. And it's funny because I mean, to have that happen once was like, okay, but you've had it a few times, and it's just reminding me. Are you familiar with John Zaffis?
I know who he is. I haven't really done much research into him.
He's Ed and Lorraine Warren's nephew, so he's been doing this like 40, 50 years, and he's on one of his shows. He's like, I hate it when my name comes through one of those damn recorders. But he's like, going on 70, so he's a little crotchety, like, I hate it when they call me specifically, so that
I love
saying
it.
that, yeah, I would be like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
So have you ever had like, you're not on investigation, you're not with your team, you're just maybe out and about with your family or just out doing something. And have you had like a spontaneous investigation, just like you weren't expecting it, but like, oh, okay, let me check this out.
Oh yeah. I mean, cause I usually talk with people, and one of the coolest situations that came up not that long ago was my husband and I, we like to go on little, trips around Florida. Florida's huge, and there's all these fun towns all over the place. So and on this particular trip, we were in Daytona, and my husband loves cars. He loves racing. He loves all things cars. So of course we check out Daytona. And whenever I go to a new town, I always try to just find whatever is the haunted location in that area. And I said, oh, there's this place called the Boot Hill Saloon, and it's right across from the Boot Hill Cemetery. That seems neat. Let's go have a drink. And I always bring some investigative equipment on with me whenever I go out of town. Just
you never know.
Have on you. And so I was at this bar, and it was kind of slow. I think we were there on a weeknight. And I started chatting with one of the bartenders, and turns out he'd been there for many years. And he told me that, hey, this bar used to actually be the mortuary that serviced the cemetery across the street. And now it's a biker bar. It's a very popular biker bar. And he said, oh, you do investigating. That's really cool. We don't really normally have people that come here to do that. And I said, well, I have my equipment. Do you want me to check out check out the bar? And he said, well, I can't tonight because, they had somebody, they were closing and they were getting things ready. But he said, if you want to come back tomorrow night, after we close down, you can have free reign at a place. And I said, absolutely. So, we came back, and I did some investigating with the bartender, and he explained to me that there were several different spirits in the bar, and one of which was a recent spirit of somebody who worked there. And the gentleman had died of an unexpected just heart attack out of nowhere. And this bartender was the one who found him, and they were friends. So we actually got his voice on my recorder. And what was crazy was, I didn't post it anywhere. I just, I sent it to the bartender, and the deceased man's daughter reached out to me, and she said, oh, I heard, from so-and-so that you got this recording of my dad. Can you send that to me? And I sent it to her, and she called me, and she said, oh my God, that's confirmation that he's okay. And she thanked me. And it was just such a sporadic situation. I just happened to be there. I happened to talk to that bartender, happened to get in there and investigate. And then I happened to catch her dad's voice, and it was meant to be. And it was a really cool experience.
That's
very
sweet.
Positive. Yeah.
Wow. I'd have been like, that's great. That's really cool. So let's talk a little bit about your blog, She Haunts, which is, how this interview came about because my sister has been following it for quite some time. So you have the blog, She Haunts, and also you work with Paranormality magazine. I was messing up even when I was practicing. Do you ever feel like you become, how did those two come about? And do you feel like you become kind of a historian for the paranormal world?
Yes, I do really feel that recently. So I started the blog because, when I started online, with having social media in general, I didn't want it to just be a popularity contest. I wanted to really talk about research and, learn what I could from others and really network and kind of, get out there and, you know, make a mark on the community. So I thought the best way for me to do that with my schedule was to do a blog. And I know I love podcasts. I love listening to them. I just don't think I have time right now to do that. But my little happy space is the blog. And I started talking about just my own personal experiences, also interactions on investigations, and just kind of talking about areas that I've explored. And from there, I did get contacted by Paranormality magazine, and I did work for them for over a year until, unfortunately, they decided to go from monthly issues to quarterly issues. So they're not quite as active anymore, just because it's very expensive to run a magazine. But I was so thankful to work with them because I really got to meet so many amazing people through that outlet, because I was interviewing people. I was also talking with locations to feature locations in the magazine. And it really kind of kept me on my toes as far as my writing is concerned, because, if you run a blog, you could just, nobody has any deadlines for you. You're just writing as you go, and it's, nobody's really pushing you. But for the magazine, I had deadlines, and I had to really be creative, and I had to push myself. So I was really thankful for that. And I think what you mentioned about becoming a historian, I think along the way, as you write and you research and you come together with people, you really do have to, take into account so much history in order to make sense of the paranormal, and also to pay homage to what's really going on. Because if you're going to a haunted location and you're investigating there, you really should learn who lived there, what kind of situations arose in the home, maybe what encountered the family with health and offspring. And you have to learn all of these things so that you can better understand where you're investigating. So I think that you have to kind of be a little bit of both when you're investigating, because if you just walk into a house and I heard this place is haunted, and you get out your recorder and say, well, who's here? Are you a man or a woman? You're not going to get the kind of responses that if you walked in there and said, hi, I'm here to speak with, Sarah Thompson. Are you with us today? Are your children here? And then maybe, since you're bringing up relevant facts, you might get more interaction with the Sarah character or with her children. So I
And
just think that it's a wonderful thing to be able to do both. And it brings about more of a fruitful experience for everyone.
oh, absolutely. Like I've mentioned before, like I'm really fond of urban legends. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
the more the merrier. And for me, I want to know how the legend began.
Mm-hmm.
Where if it's tied to a certain location, cool. I want to go there and find out the backstory. And two of my personal favorite videos that I filmed for my channel really required a lot of homework on my part, and I had a blast filming them. One of them was I used to live in Los Angeles, and there's a urban legend about a city beneath downtown LA that was built by lizard people.
Oh.
Yeah, and the legend's been around since the 30s. So I'm like, okay, that's downtown. It's like a 20-minute drive for me. And I did the research, and it was really kind of a scam. This guy ran across the city council back in the early 1930s. And after about a month, they realized he was a con artist. I'm like, yeah, kick rocks. And they, ended the contract and everything. But because he has such a great story, and it was actually covered by the Associated Press and the LA Times in the early
Mm-hmm.
1930s, from there, it just kind of grew into its own story. Lizard people built this city under LA. And my video is the only video that went to all the locations in downtown LA connected with that story. So, and it kind of took off. It did really well. And then the other one I did was the Devil's Highway from
Mm-hmm.
like New Mexico, Colorado into Utah. And mine is the only one on YouTube that tells a story, the actual history of how it came to be from on location from all three states.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's the research part of it that I love and hate at the same time. but it drags you in.
It does. And it's, because we all like a good story and we all need to know the origins, I think, and even if you don't investigate, even if you just like the paranormal and you're interested, maybe you run around the outskirts of the paranormal by just going to a ghost tour. Part of the ghost tour is learning about the history. Why is it haunted? And any good ghost story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And
Absolutely.
I think, when we leave out the beginning part, it doesn't do the story justice. And it's more I love learning about stuff like that. And whenever you go to another city or another state, you want to learn about what makes that place tick. You got to look at the ghost stories, right?
And especially with the tours, it brings so much more into it. When the tour guide is passionate about it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best I filmed, because I filmed several ghost tours for my channel,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the best ones was a vampire tour I went on in New Orleans. And
Mm-hmm.
the girl that ran the tour, I'm still friends with her. We communicate every once in a while on Instagram, but she lives and breathes everything about vampires. She's a walking encyclopedia about the history. And you can see it in the video, the passion she has for this topic, and it made it that much more exciting or interesting. It just reels you in. And but on on a different note, one of the things that I found really interesting when I was looking, setting up my notes for this interview, is that in addition to investigating different locations in the United States, you also investigated in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple questions there, like when you're investigating here in the States, you're essentially your home, so you pretty
Mm-hmm.
much know what to expect where we go culturally. What's it like adapting to different cultural approaches to the paranormal?
So in Japan, it's not the same as it is in the United States. My husband actually used to live in Japan before we met, and we've been going to Japan together since 2012.
Not jealous at
And,
all.
and, we go pretty often, and we have quite a few friends over there, Japanese friends. And, when I started getting more involved in the paranormal, I did ask their opinions on things, and they absolutely believe in the paranormal. That's the difference. Everybody over there believes in it, but they don't really investigate it. They don't really mess with it. They respect it, and they all believe it. But you're not going to really find ghost hunting teams like you would in the United States. You might
Yeah.
find Westerner people investigating over there, but it's not as, I would say, as popular of an activity as it is here. And there's
So,
the attitude shift is a little bit different.
so we're not going to find a Japanese Zach Bagans anytime soon.
I couldn't find anybody, and when I asked my friends, they weren't aware of anybody like that. But the only thing is, the language barrier for me. I'm not searching online in Japanese. I'm searching online. It's being, translated. So there might be some teams out there, but I just don't see them online. I can't find their research, but it's just probably not as out there, maybe as public as it is here. But there's a lot of people that do believe in it, and they're very respectful of it. And I would say that my experiences over there, I'm a very respectful person when it comes to investigating anyway. But over there, I tried to be even more respectful because if you go to a cemetery over there, it's a very sacred space. Family members go to the headstones of their loved ones very often. And I actually encountered quite a bit of that because when I stayed there recently, my backyard was a cemetery. And the Japanese apartment that I rented in Tokyo, it literally was on top of a cemetery. And I saw people visiting these plots and leaving out offerings daily. People would change flowers, they would put incense, there were teas left. I mean, and if you walked through there, you can see, someone's changing the flowers constantly. And it's a
Did
different culture, I
you
think.
plan that to rent an apartment above it, or did it just happen?
That just happened. And what was funny about that was normally when we book a Airbnb or an apartment or anything, we do Google, like a Google walk around, and you can go on the Google Street View and you can see, there's a convenience store here. We're this close to the train station and all that. But we were just looking through the front lens. We were just walking around the front area and around the streets around it, but we didn't realize it was behind us. So basically our backyard, when I was out on the patio, I'm overlooking a cemetery. It was the coolest thing. And that was the first time for me that's happened being over there. It was just kind of neat. It almost seemed like it was supposed to be, it was meant to be.
Yep.
And it was fun. I really enjoyed it, and I definitely think that I did a little investigating around that cemetery. I also did some investigating in and around. There's some parks that have some interesting history, and I got a lot of activity on the EMF and with REM pods. I didn't get any recordings because I'm not speaking Japanese, so I didn't expect that. But I did get some cool activity, and it was a lot of fun. And I felt that being able to connect with a spirit in a different country is an interesting experience.
That sounds
So.
where you were staying. It's kind of remind me. I don't know if you've ever stayed at the Clown Motel.
No, but it's on my list to do. I hope I
Yeah,
can.
I actually stayed there one time. I was actually passing through. I was driving back from Lake Tahoe back to LA, and I just happened to stay there at the last minute on a whim. It was interesting. A couple of things happened, but it's next door, and I knew ahead of time because I looked it up, and I knew it was next door to an old cemetery, like 100-year-old cemetery that they still
Hmm.
maintain. I just didn't realize it's like 10 feet away. You could literally
Yeah.
throw a stick and it's going to land on the cemetery. It's that close. You're like, and you don't really notice it at night when you get there, unless you're standing right there. But during the day, it's
Hmm.
like, okay, open a window, there's a cemetery. Um, but yeah, you get a chance, you should definitely check it out. It's cool, and they kind of updated it too. So a couple of things about Japan, and I just recall because a couple of years back, I was just doing some reading on Japanese culture and the paranormal side of Japanese culture. And I don't know if you've heard anything relating to this as far as their folklore, but from my impression and what I read about, a lot of their folklore when it comes to ghosts, a vast majority of it is the ghost of women who were
Hmm.
wronged by their husbands or by men in their
Hmm.
lives. So there's like a lot in the Japanese folklore and culture when it comes to ghosts. There's a lot of angry women, female spirits. Did you
hmm
hear anything about that, or?
I did hear a lot about that, and I think the most famous stories that I was able to find involved, a wrong spirit. And there was actually very close to where I was staying. There was a shrine to a woman such as what you're speaking of. She was wronged by her husband, and she came back, and the theory was that she was, you know, uh, any man that crossed her shrine would be punished, and a lot of women would go to the shrine. And I thought that was just the most interesting thing. And another one that we went to, another shrine, was there was the when you think of Tokyo, you think of these huge skyscrapers, but there's also lots of little shrines that are just like tucked in there because they built around them. But there was one for this samurai who was supposed to be the first samurai, and supposedly his head was buried at this plot in the middle of Tokyo.
I think
And
I saw that on
you see
Exhibition
it?
Unknown, Josh Gates. I think he
Yeah.
went there. It does sound
It,
familiar.
it's wild because it's in the middle of a business park, and the way that the story went was they tried to move his shrine, and supposedly the people that were involved in moving the shrine, everybody was dying of horrific deaths, and this was in the 80s, and all these horrible things were happening to everyone that was surrounded with the project. So they said, okay, we believe this might be the spirit who, of the samurai who's angry with us. So they decided to keep it and actually make it more of a focal point and respect it. And when I was there, I couldn't tell you how many business people I saw walking up to the shrine and paying respect and walking away. It was a steady stream on a random weekday at the middle of the afternoon. People probably on their lunch breaks. They go to the shrine, they pay their respect, and then they walk into their building that they work at. And
Yeah, I
that's what's
think
kind of neat. There's so much respect for the dead, and there's respect for these curses. They don't want to piss them off anymore. So
yeah, I think that was a location on that episode because the
yeah.
episode was about he was looking for this like rare samurai sword, like
Yes.
legendary samurai sword. So when they filmed there as part of the episode, they had a high-ranking government official, very
Hmm.
nice man, but they said like he's way up there in and the Japanese government officials, and he's like, basically, here, let me take you on a tour, but we're going to keep an eyeball on you because we don't want anything happening in this place. So he was there welcoming and kind of like keeping an eyeball, the vibe I got. But wow, that's cool.
It was neat. It was really fun experience. But I think, over there, they fear these characters, these people and these curses, and they respect it. And that's the thing, is that all these business people that are working in these high rises, you would think that would be a nonsense thing to do. Like, why would you go to this grave every day and pay respect to somebody that is a samurai? Well, who cares? But they do care, and they respect that so much, and they want to please the spirit, and they don't want to be in the bad favor of this spirit. So it's just an interesting cultural difference, because I don't think you would see that in the United States. I really don't.
Do you ever see that movie? Because it sounds like it's one of my favorite movies, called Shutter, I believe.
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's this American couple that lives in Japan, and the girls, like, they get haunted by the ghost of this Japanese girl. And as the story moves on, it's like she was wronged by these men, and then you find out why and the connection to the couple, and then the ending of this movie just gives me cold chills.
Okay, now I have to watch it.
Yeah, it probably came out like 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago. It's called Shutter, and it's an American couple. The main guy in it, he was on Fringe. He played the son on a TV show, Fringe.
Oh, I love that show.
Yeah, so the guy that played the son on the show,
Pacey. He was also in. I call him Pacey. He was the guy in Dawson's Creek.
Yes, that guy.
Yeah.
So he stars in the movie. He plays the boyfriend. So
okay.
I can't think of his name, but yeah, you got to watch that movie, especially if you've been to Japan like as much as you have. You'll dig that movie, and like the ending. Wow, that's all I can say.
That sounds really cool. I definitely will check that out because I like that actor, and that sounds like something up my alley.
Totally, yeah, you would totally dig this movie. So, last question about Japan, because I was really wondering, because it's just, I have a fascination with it. I just don't know if I would go there. And I'll word this carefully because it's YouTube. But have you visited or considered going to that very well-known forest that has all the unfortunate people made those unfortunate choices there? Have you been to that particular forest? I don't know the official name for it. You know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I think that's the famous one that like.
Yeah. So it's Oh, sorry, that's my chair. The forest is just outside of the Mount Fuji area. It's at the base of the Mount Fuji, and there's this area, like a village around there, which I've stayed at many times, and I did explore the outskirts. So I don't want to say I investigated there, but I visited. And when I went to that area, I did a few different activities. I did a rope line. I did a exploration of some caves, and I did just light hiking, and I went around the outskirts of that forest. I didn't go specifically into it. I didn't really dive deep into that situation, but I was aware of it when I was there. And when I was in that zone, I was with my husband, and I did not have any ghost hunting equipment with me. I was just there. I had my camera, I had my phone, and I was just kind of, taking pictures along the outskirts. And what I noticed though, when we walked in, which kind of creeped me out, was when you kind of go in a little bit, it's almost immediately very quiet. And that was one thing that I noticed that was a little bit odd and didn't really sit well with me, because when you walk into a forest anywhere else, you're going to hear birds chirping and bugs, and maybe, you're going to hear sounds of being in a wooded area. And when we walked into that zone, it just was very eerie and silent. And I didn't really feel comfortable. My husband didn't really like it. So we kind of just walked around a little bit and kind of made our way out. But we weren't in the heart of it. So I want to say that. I didn't go trekking through and, onto trails to try to find anything. But I am aware that there are certain areas, and if you go to the trailheads of some of these places, you are going to see lots of signs.
I've heard about
that
that. Yeah.
talk about it. And the problem is that they don't really have the type of, I guess it's really resources. They don't really have the resources to have a ton of like park rangers or anything like that. And so they have all these signs saying, talking about, please don't use the forest for this purpose,
Options, phone numbers, I think you can call.
Yes, yes. And there are a lot of different, I would say, resources listed for people that need help, but there's just not a lot of presence all the time like you would think. I would think in a forest like that, maybe there might be more rangers or people patrolling or, along that line, but there just really isn't.
Yeah.
There are volunteers.
They
I'm
might
sorry.
honestly be scared too. The Rangers might be
Yeah,
like, if it's
yeah.
that ingrained in the culture too, they're like, ugh.
There is, and it's just one of those things. A lot of people are aware of it, and there are it was explained to me that there are different colors in the forest for people that are camping that represent how they're feeling. So there is, different colored flags they can put up at their campsite, and it might mean like "leave me alone," or "I'm thinking about this," or "I'm not thinking about this," or a different color code system. And there are volunteers that go out there pretty regularly to look for people to recover.
I've
And
never heard that.
it's just dark. It's just very dark. So I'm not normally someone that would, I didn't seek out going there for that. I was there actually to go to Mount Fuji. And I've been to that area around Mount Fuji a few times, and I actually did my first climb on Mount Fuji in 2017. And it's a really cool area, and I really recommend anybody who's interested in going to Japan to go to this area and just experience it. But going to that forest, I just
Yeah, that's one of like, it's. I find the story fascinating, but
yeah.
like, I don't know
I
if
don't
I'd
want to find
actually.
anybody. And that was
Yeah,
the other thing. I didn't really want to go too far in because I would not be able to go to sleep at night if I stumbled across a person, in that
yeah,
situation. I would not. I wouldn't be cool with it.
yeah.
So
I
I just
mean,
sort of wanted to feel how it felt in there, because everybody talks about the energy being different. And I can tell you, I did notice the sound. The sound, that's real.
what
If you
sound?
you walk in and there's a lack of sound. It's a weird thing. It didn't make any sense to me how I could walk into a forest and immediately sound like I put noise canceling headphones on.
Okay,
It's
that just gave me
eerie.
chills.
It's eerie. Like, where are
Wow.
all the bugs? Where are all the birds? Where are all, there's
Oh,
not, it's just absence.
oh, wow. I didn't know about that part. Um, oh, and speaking of movies, they actually, I'm a total movie nerd too, so movies come to mind. But they actually made a movie, an American movie about that a few years back. I think it's actually called The Forest.
Yes, I
And
saw that. Yeah.
yeah,
The twin
yes,
sisters.
yes.
Yeah.
And I like that actress. I mean, she was really cool on Game of Thrones. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
that was a good movie. So, wow, yeah. But I
Yeah.
commend you for even going that far into that
Well,
forest because I don't even know if I could. Wow.
there was the time I was there, they have like a bus service that you can take to different stops, so you can go on the rope line, then the bus takes you to the caves, and it takes you, it's sort of, you just get on this loop thing. And I mean, you could kind of walk over, towards the outskirts, and it's spooky. I mean, there were people that were hiking in that zone. We saw vehicles as if somebody was hiking. So I don't think it's just for that purpose. I think other people, go as well. But yeah, it's just got a reputation. It's got a dark reputation.
Okay, wow. That is fascinating. Okay, so I have a couple more questions and we can wrap
Okay,
up.
sounds good.
I am so appreciative of your time. Thank you again.
Thank
Okay,
you for having
and I'm going to hear it from my sister forever. See, I got you a guest. I got you a cool guest. I'm like, yeah, okay, go away.
me.
So for people who are into the paranormal but
Mhm.
not really sure where to start, what would your advice be? Are there any beginner friendly tools or tips for someone who wants to, dip their toes into this?
Absolutely. So I really do think that, when it comes to getting started with paranormal, there are so many ways that you can, dip your toe in without spending too much money. And, there's easy ways that you can get out there and try it. And I would say, if you want some equipment, you can go on Amazon. I actually have it in my blog, a list of items under $20 on Amazon that you can get, and you can start investigating. But you can also look around your house and you can use some things you already have. I highly recommend, if you have an iPhone or an Android phone, the voice memo recording app in your phone is wonderful for doing EVP sessions, because the phones are very sensitive with the microphones. And I've gotten quite a few EVPs on my phone. And also, if you're in a location, maybe you're on a ghost tour, or if you, do a museum tour of a home or something along those lines, if you're just filming with your phone, go back later and listen and see if you pick anything up, because you might just be taking a video of a space and you might capture an EVP. And that's happened to me as well. So that's without spending any money. Another experiment that I like to do, which if you have one of those little, like a mag light flashlight, I have a little mini one. You can also use a regular mag light, but anything that has the screw top, so that what you do is you unscrew it just enough so that it's barely making a battery connection. And you can put the flashlight down somewhere and, start asking questions, turn the light on, turn the light off. And if it's making sense with intelligence with your questions, it might be paranormal. But and that's something you might not necessarily have to spend any money on if you already have one of those flashlights.
Yeah,
I would say
that's one of the best old school techniques out there. I really, because it's very simple. It's a flashlight. Everybody's got a flashlight. Put it down, I love that technique.
Yeah, and it's also, for me, it's also, if you're asking questions to a spirit, they might know what a flashlight is, but they might not know what a REM pod is. So if we're investigating and someone says, "Hey, can you turn on the REM pod?" They don't know what a REM pod is. Most people nowadays don't even know what a REM pod is, especially somebody from the 1800s.
Exactly, yeah, because people not involved in this, you have to explain, it looks like a coffee can with an antenna.
Yeah.
Wow, that is such a good point. That is,
but, they might know what a flashlight is, and, you can use that to communicate. And so I get great responses with that. But I would say, if you want to get a couple things and not spend a ton of money, a EMF reader is wonderful. EMF readers, you could pick one up on Amazon for around $20. And as long as you are careful with it, because it will pick up electronics, it will pick up, it's meant to find wiring in walls. An electrician going to a home and looking for, wiring in your walls, he's going to use one of those to find it. That's what it's made for. So if you're experiencing spikes in an EMF and you're in an area with nothing that is turned on, that is perhaps a paranormal situation. Also, cell phones can affect EMF devices. So if you're investigating, I usually tell people, put your phone on airplane mode, and that way you're not going to get any false positives. And lastly, the other thing I recommend having, and you do have to, I would buy the actual device, not an app, is a spirit box device. There's a ton of them out there. I have a bunch of different ones. But I think
makes it some good ones. I have their small one, the one that looks like a little transistor radio. That's one of the best beginner pieces of equipment you can get. It's affordable and it's good quality.
It's great. And they have a few different styles on there. The one that I think is the easiest to use and, that I get the best results on is the SB, S like Sam, B like boy 7. SB7, and I know the Ghost Stop also has a store on Amazon, and they have one on Amazon. So I'm putting that out there because I know I'm comfortable buying stuff on Amazon and I can return it.
Yeah,
but
I actually met the two guys that started Ghost Stop. I met them at a Paracon in Michigan, and they have it's creative, but it's creepy as hell. I think they call it the Boo Bear.
Oh, yeah.
It's a little teddy bear that has a recorder inside, so it talks to you. And I even told them, like, guys, that's cool, but creeps the hell out of me. They thought it was hilarious. Really nice guys,
it is really creepy. My friend has one, and it is very creepy. But, and that's a crazy expensive one. I would say that's an intermediate to advanced equipment.
Dolls creep me out anyway. I'm like, okay, I know they're moving around. When I'm not here, they're moving around.
But really though, I would say, the gist of it is you don't really need to spend a lot of money to get started. And the other thing I would say is if you can try to find a friend to investigate with, just because it's not a good idea to go investigating by yourself for a multitude of reasons. But I would say the main reasons for me would be if something bad happened to you and you got hurt because you're walking around in a dark space and you need help, it's good to have a friend with you. And then also, if you are in a location and you actually do get paranormal activity, it's good to have someone that's with you that can corroborate that story with you. Because if it happens and you're alone, and you say, I don't know, maybe I saw that, maybe I didn't see that, was that my imagination playing tricks on me, or did I see a shadow person? If you have somebody with you, they might have seen it too, and maybe it's paranormal. Maybe it wasn't your imagination because they experienced it. So I would say if you can, definitely bring a friend, and also it makes it more fun.
Exactly. That is, I mean, all those tips. That is great advice. I mean, one after the. I mean, I expected a couple of like this and this, but you were like boom, boom, boom. I'm like, wow, this is all great advice. So yeah, and definitely, I'm gonna add a link to your socials and your blog so people
Thank
can
you.
find this too, and your list of recommended items. That's awesome. So, my last question, and sometimes I have to get serious, okay,
Mm-hmm.
on this show. So I'm coming up. I ask this one for my guests every once in a while. If they were going to make a movie about one of your cases, which one would you pick? And more importantly, who would play you in the movie?
Oh, that's good. That's a good question. Well, I would say my investigation of the Sorrel Weed House in Savannah, Georgia was by far one of the coolest, creepiest investigations I've done. And as far as someone to play me, an actress, Christina Ricci.
I could see that. Yeah, the dark hair. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's creepy. I love it. So,
Wednesday Adams. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I want Wednesday to play me. I can totally. Okay, now I can see the dark hair. Yeah, I see it. Well, Gina, this has been awesome. Again, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show. This has been really fun. My sister will be very happy because she's been, she follows all your stuff. She thinks you're so cool.
Well, thank
And,
you and for
and you are cool.
recommending.
Absolutely. I'll let her know. So for those watching on YouTube and listening on Spotify, where can we find you to follow your further adventures?
So if you're on Instagram and TikTok, I can be found at She Haunts, and my paranormal team is at Afterlife All Stars.
Great. And for those of you watching this on YouTube, I will provide links to all of her social media, her website, her blogs in the video description below. So start following her and just get involved with Gina Black. See where she haunts.
Thank you.
That's not a bad tie-in. That was off the top of my head. Okay. So once again, thank you, Gina. This has been a blast. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. This has been Beyond the Compass, where travelers and the paranormal meet at the crossroads. Thank you again, and have an amazing day.